Hey, everybody. Today on the Agent Excel podcast, we have our guest, Desireé Cosby. What's up, Desireé?
Hey, Chris. Not much. How's it going?
I'm doing good. Well, this is a second attempt. We tried to do the podcast last week, but we found out I am not smart enough to run a computer, so it didn't work. Here we are again, huh?
Yeah. Now we both have our ducks in a row.
So I wanted to bring you on. We've met each other through some masterminds, and hearing your story, I thought it would be, it'd be inspiring for others to hear on how you run your business right now. So if you could just tell us why you got into the real estate industry, when, and just kind of give us a 2-minute overview of what your career has looked like.
Yeah, sure. Hey, Chris, thanks for having me on. So I got into real estate very early on. I got into property management when I was about 19 years old, and I managed some apartment complexes. I eventually became a community manager, which meant I was responsible for everything. And I learned after a couple of years that I didn't like that so much when it came to tenants and tenant problems. And it was in Albuquerque, so there's some interesting things that happen in Albuquerque. And, I ended up getting pregnant and got called to the property when I was about 8 months pregnant at 3 a.m. and there was a shooting on site. And I was expected to figure out what happened. And that's when I said, okay, this is enough. This is okay. I think I'm going to take a pause here and have a baby and not chase down gunmen in an apartment complex. And so I took a little break, about a year and a half, and then ended up on the residential side as a transaction coordinator for my own realtor. And that led into me, venturing out on my own, eventually starting a team, and then growing that team and eventually moving to a new state and starting over.
Okay. So when did you move to Arizona?
I moved to Arizona full-time. I call full-time, meaning I uprooted my family and planted them here in 2019.
Okay. So let's just tell the listeners, what's your production like in New Mexico?
So New Mexico is consistently growing. We've grown every year since I left, which was something I actually wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
But we are sitting right about 20 to 25 million in New Mexico.
Wow. And that's through you getting the business, and then you're still just passing it off to people.
Yes. Yeah. Now I have 2 team members. And so that includes, whatever business they may introduce to the pot, so to speak. But yeah, we're mostly a referral business.
So when you came a few years ago to Arizona, what was the scariest part of that? I'm just thinking out loud of what I would have thought. Did you think it was just going to did you think it was going to fall apart?
I did. I thought it would be gone. I thought it would fall apart. I was terrified. I got licensed in 2017 and it took me 2 years to make the leap. And that's what I assumed, is that it would just crumble, in my absence, and I would, be at the bottom starting all over again.
Okay. So how many years were you a realtor in New Mexico?
From January of 2012. So
okay. So quite a while.
5 years?
So,
yeah.
Okay. And then, so now you've been in Arizona for a few years. So how is that? I mean, how has that worked? You said you've been growing every single year and you're not there. So what does that look like? I think what I want to connect with is there's actually there's quite a few people who actually would love to move states, but they have a real estate business and they just don't know how they would ever accomplish that. I don't know if that's our own limiting beliefs that we have. I'd like you just to talk about, why do you think that's grown over the years and things like that?
Yeah, sure. No, I definitely think it's a limiting belief. I think we all get, in the habit of thinking that everything is happening because of us and strictly us. And if we are gone, then that no longer happens. And so I was guilty and still am. I mean, to be fair, of thinking that my clients were wholly dependent on me. If I wasn't there answering the call or showing the property, that they would just find someone else. And what I learned is that your people are ultimately your people as long as you take care of them. So if you can put people on your team in place that will treat your clients as well as you treat them, then your clients trust that you're looking out for them, and they'll continue to trust you to help them with real estate. So for me, that looks like constant phone calls, social media interaction, texting with my clients, and then they're getting the same level of service as I would provide them on the ground in New Mexico with my team members.
Okay. So What does that look like right now? Like when you came here, how did you start that whole handoff? Like when you landed in Arizona, and let's say that very first listing or buyer that got referred to you that probably still might have thought you were living in New Mexico. What that handoff look like? And let me go back just a second. So did you have a team when you left?
I had a team when I left. Yes.
Okay. So how many agents did you have? Was it the same structure you currently have right now?
It was the same structure. I had at that time 2 more agents.
Okay.
So I guess there were 4 agents, and then me. My husband's also an agent, but he, of course, moved with me. So um, now, kind of how that looked at first is I stumbled my way through it, and so I've learned over the years a different way of handling it. But I would almost apologize to my clients, apologize for my absence. I'm so sorry I'm not there, but I have Elizabeth here, and she's going to take great care of you, and please let me know if you have questions. I'm always here for you, and I can fly out if needed. That's how I presented it. And I learned that I was just kind of tripping myself up by saying too much. People didn't want to know all the details. They just want to know that they're being looked out for. And they trust me to do that for them. And in turn, trust the people that I trust with them. And so it's just, the foundation is trust. And as long as you've built trust with your clients, they're going to trust that you have their best interests at heart, whether it's you showing them the home or, your teammate.
So is almost all of your business just through repeat and referral business?
I would say yes. I
Okay.
do. I have a small relocation file that I get, and that's a referral from my reload department, but
Okay.
99% of it is referral. Yeah.
So how have you built that in New Mexico? Because I mean, this really, for all the listeners, they're all in different states. Like this can go to any state, obviously. So what did that look like? How did you build such a reputation there where you've grown a team and then also had people, now through social media, you being gone for so many years, they clearly know you're gone, but they still refer you business. I mean, I'm amazed by that. So like, what is it that you're doing to stay connected to them? Like what systematically do you do? And then what you just do naturally?
So I think naturally is I just have a tendency to, I just really, truly love my clients. So I do anything I can to go out of my way to make sure they're taken care of. And I mean, I'll try to think of some examples of that, but really what it boils down to is just truly taking care of people, putting their interests ahead of you, regardless of what that means for you. You're going to make mistakes along the way. And if you do the right thing and correct them and they see you correcting those things, it just starts to build trust. And I think if you come from a sincere place, people can see that. They can see that you're genuine, and you just build a genuine relationship with your clients. So that's how I've managed to do that. I mean, I definitely made mistakes, and I dropped the ball in places, and I just owned up to it and said, I'm sorry, and stayed in touch the best I could. And I've been very fortunate that my clients have remained very loyal to me for the most part. And so I think I just naturally like to take care of people, and people can appreciate that.
Yeah. So what do you like when you say stay in touch? What do you do? Because I mean, I follow you on Facebook and Instagram, and I see like what you did the other day as far as like driving around and handing off gifts and stuff. So what is that kind of stuff that you do? Like what did you do when you're in New Mexico to build that business? Like what did you do systematically through marketing and through pop buys and things like that?
Yeah, so really marketing with my database, with my people. I call them my people. So when I say people, I'm talking about my database. But I just arranged, when I was in town, I was having constant coffee dates and happy hours and get-togethers with my people. And I wasn't the best gift giver then, but I have learned over the years that I really, really love giving gifts. So now I've started implementing, especially this last year, I'm really honing in on just gifting that fills my cup. It makes people happy, and it's a good way for me to stay in front of them now. But yeah, for example, here in Arizona, my people pool, if you will, is a little smaller, so I can do those things. Like last week, I did pass out chips and salsa for Cinco de Mayo, and people love that. They truly appreciated it. I ended up on the couch at 2 different listing appointments. I'm not even exaggerating, while passing out chips and salsa. So I think I just really, really love gift giving, and that's how I stay in touch.
Okay. So what is it? I want to try to get the listeners to understand how someone can run a real estate company and not actually be involved in so much stuff. I'm noticing just by teaching a lot of classes that like people have like a huge disconnect with that. Like when I like when I tell people like, hey, I don't work with buyers anymore, they almost think as if like I don't get any buyer referrals anymore. And I'm like, no, like we get more than ever from my friends, family, and past clients. And it's like I said, just such a disconnect because they're thinking, oh, well, I'd have to handle my friend or my, my past client. So I want to ask you this in a way where we can kind of go through like some situations so people can learn from it. So when a buyer gets referred to you right now, like let's say somebody says, hey, I've got a brother who wants to buy a house in New Mexico, right? What does that look like? What's the processes look like? Because I think we can all say, hey, I don't work with the clients, like actually boots on the ground, but the agents, some of them don't quite understand what that looks like. And I don't think they understand because they don't understand the logistics of like the conversation and the consultation of the handoff. So what does that look like if someone referred you business right now and it was a buyer?
So if I get a buyer referral now, I always make the first contact. I reach out. I see these clients' needs. I build some rapport. I explain the situation. And while I'm doing this in my head, I'm figuring out what teammate of mine is the best fit personality wise and location wise for this person.
Mhm.
So then that evolves into, hey, I'm going to put you in touch with Elizabeth or Juan, whoever's the best match. And these are going to be the next steps. And you just outline the next steps. Then I contact that teammate, explain the situation, and then I start a group text, typically. Not always, but that's the preferred way. A group text between me, the teammate, and the client. And that group text continues throughout the transaction. Sometimes inadvertently, they spiral onto their own text because they think they're disturbing me or whatever. And I just have to reassure that's not the case. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with letting go of that component a little bit. But it's just as simple as that. It's actually so simple that it feels almost unbelievable, but people, if they feel like you're looking out for them, they will trust you. And so I just do that handoff and stay in touch throughout the transaction. And then upon closing, reach out again and then add them to my gift giving list.
How do you stay in contact with them when let's say it takes 2 months to find a house? How do you stay in contact with them in the way where you're still wanting to stay in touch with them, but not wanting to get too involved in, what I mean? Like, let's say it's a group text going on and then let's say it goes off to just them, right? Mm-hmm. And then now you're kind of stepping in and just ask, is there a time where you're just like, hey, how are things going? Or is that kind of a open-ended question where you're going to lead to getting questions about the transaction?
I may not, I'll usually know a specific, right? There's usually my teammates are really good at keeping me in the loop. So I know what's happening. So I'll never approach the client as if I don't know. What I'll do is just reach out and say, hey, Elizabeth said that, this is happening. This is a problem we're having with your offers. Maybe I have this idea. Are you open to trying this? Or, hey, that contract fell through. I'm sorry that appraisal didn't come in. Here's what we're going to try next time. I just having my teammates keep me aware of what's happening helps me to know how to stay in touch with each client because each one is different.
Yeah, I've always found that if the person on your team is, if you explain a consultation to a client and you pass the baton off and it gets, passed off correctly and they're doing their job, no one ever cares that they're being passed off to somebody else who's doing good service, right? The only time I found that a client would ever care is if the person that you're passing them off to is dropping the ball. And then they're thinking like, oh, I need to call Chris or I need to call Desiree. I need to figure out what's going on. I'm really glad you went over that process because like I said, I find that people just are perplexed that this goes down. I find that our story is so similar. Like I have obviously agents on my team that get leads and I don't know those clients, right? But like my personal production, which is a lot, I do the same thing. It's a consultation at my office and I have my showing partner there. And I'm telling them the whole story of how you buy a home and the consultation and what we're gonna have to do. And this is the showing partner. And it's literally that, like it's the group text when they leave. And I tell them like, hey, when you leave, I'm gonna send a group text, just any homes you want to see come into this group text. And it's just my showing partner knows exactly, like he almost knows when I'll have group text all day. And I know he knows the ones to answer and I know the ones to answer. It's like, hey, we want to see these 3 homes today. He knows that's all him. And then there'll be that one text in there where I'm like, ooh, yeah, that's totally me. And I'll jump on the phone and do my consultation, which I'm good at. So it's nice to see that it's the same thing. It's just having systems in your business and structure, and no one really cares that you're not there opening the door. Let's lean into now listings. That's a little bit different. So how does that work? So somebody calls you today and says, hey, I want you to list my property.
Yeah, I mean, it works very similar. Now, since most of mine are repeat clients or referrals, they've actually usually been looped into how that works. Elizabeth has been with me. Elizabeth's my right-hand lady. She's my go-to. Um, she's been with me for almost 8 years now. So most of these clients cycling through have been through this cycle at least once with us. So they almost come to me already knowing what to expect. But in the event there's someone new, it's the same thing. You just described the process. All of our listings are handled the same way. We have a staging consult. We have all these different steps. And you just explain that up front and let them know that I'm always available, and then carry on.
So are they, Elizabeth, is she playing is she actually the one comping the house, doing is she playing the actual realtor role and you're just team leader? Or is it something where she's obviously still a realtor, but more of an assistant to you? You're still doing the comps and pricing and doing the consultation?
Most of the time I'm doing the comps, the pricing, she will do it a little preemptively, and then we'll tag team and just make sure we're on the same page. And then she's just mainly the main point of conversation and the feet on the ground. If a situation needs to escalate, that comes to me. Anytime there's a problem, that comes to me. So I just have her there as a person, and then she facilitates the entire transaction. She's also my transaction coordinator.
Okay. And so, what are the biggest challenges with being out of state?
The biggest challenges are if a situation arises that you can't be there in person in the event it would be needed. That's few and far between, right? But there have been some situations that I wish I could have just gone to my client's house and kind of worked through it face to face. So when you're 7 hours away, that's a little trickier, and it just doesn't happen. So, that's been kind of the challenge. And then, nobody, I don't mean this as arrogant or anything, but nobody can quite do a listing appointment like I can, no matter how much I've tried to teach it, and it's more a comfort thing. It's more a confidence thing. And that's just something you can't teach. And so I am finding, for example, the relocation component that was a part of my business, we're losing a lot of those listings because I'm not present.
Okay.
And I used to be the winner of those listing appointments. So that's
Okay.
probably the biggest challenge, is figuring out, and maybe that's bringing on one more person that I trained that maybe can do it just like I do.
Are those because you have to actually compete for those listings and they're not your network that really believes, is that the case?
Exactly. So if
Okay.
anyone's unfamiliar with relocation, typically you're competing at least against one other agent.
Okay.
There's only a handful of relocation agents in a very small sandbox. And, most of them know what I'm up to. So they're not shy about telling that client what I'm up to.
Okay. Okay. Cool. I mean, that's nice to see that you have it's nice to see that the referral game is where it's at. The people who, it's always what I lean into when I teach agents or coach anybody. I'm like, these referrals, I got one yesterday, I got one today, and I get these texts from my clients, and I am so I still get chills. I've been doing this for 17 years. I still get chills when someone sends me someone, because I know, like you just said, on the relocation side, you have to go meet with people and compete, and
Right.
you got to do this song and dance there. And it's so nice when people just, you walk in and hey, I know you, I trust you, I respect you. And they're almost just let's do this. There's no talking them into doing anything. There's not even usually a huge presentation that has to go on. You're just walking in and talking about what we got to do. You're not really having to talk about what we're going to do. And also, this is who I am, where I've been, and all your credentials.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm truly honored. I mean it. I feel that same kind of that happiness you feel. I'm honored every single time. I just have to reflect and say, wow, what a compliment. How special is this? And let me make sure that I let them know how special this is. And don't forget why I'm where I'm at.
Yeah, that's very cool. Do you have being out of state, do you have any systematized meetings or cadences with your team on what you guys do?
I don't. I'm the wild, wild west. Yeah.
It's just a free for all.
It's just a free for all.
Update me anytime. Yeah, just okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's transition now into Arizona. So you've been here a few years, and obviously that's just building a new network. That's always interesting, not being in that state and growing up and having all the high school friends and things like that to start off your career. What does that look like in Arizona?
So Arizona's been a little bit slower to grow than New Mexico had been. And I think that what you just mentioned is a big reason why. It's just a networking game, right? And so I started with a very tiny network, but what I have learned over the last 24 months or so is almost every single client that I have in Arizona is a referral, but not from a client. It's from a realtor that I've had a previous relationship with. So it's almost a referral business and just a whole different, capacity. And I'm not gifting agents and I'm not, trying to take care of that database. But I think when you've built a reputation that you do right by people, agents are comfortable referring you. And so I've built a different type of referral business, as in regards to Arizona.
So meaning like agents from New Mexico referring you business here?
Correct. Yeah.
Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. So what is the, is your marketing that you do? Like, do you have totally separate marketing? I mean, because you
No,
can't do pop buys there. So
it's not. It's just, I tried to do that for a little while. I tried to wear two different hats and it just didn't work. I was literally hiding on social media where I lived, what I was up to, trying to make it not seem that I was, not in New Mexico. And I just eventually about 2 years ago said, I'm done with that. I'm tired. It's exhausting. So let me just see if I can mesh this all together. So I mix my business cards between the states and my social media is all even for across both states. It's kind of meshed together at this point.
probably best. Yeah. That could
Yeah.
probably be crazy. Were you the two cell phones too?
Hey, I still have my two cell phones, but I'm phasing one of them out. But yeah, I did have
So
two cell
are you
phones.
still doing pop buys? I mean, do you still have someone do the gifting there for you?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't, which is something I'm starting to implement. So, last week together, you and I were both separately, but ended up being at the same time sending out cards to clients. So I'm
Yeah.
still doing that from afar, but that is on I have it on my calendar now for me to make trips just for the purpose of doing pop buys so I can have that face-to-face interaction.
Well, and maybe a recommendation, because I had to go through this limiting belief because I have quite a few properties in Oklahoma, right? And we self-manage them. Like my team handles it. And so my assistant does. And so with them being afar, it was a boots on the ground issue, right? So like everything, hiring a plumber is easy, all that's kind of easy, right? But then there was some issues we were having with, and I'd call it boots on the ground. And I was like, wait, how can we still accomplish what we would do in Arizona if we could but we can't be there. So I asked my realtor there, I was like, hey, do you have somebody who like stay at home mom or someone from your church or just someone who wants to go do just running around, right? Like when we need someone to go put a key in the lockbox or let someone in or do a final walkthrough, like that we could just pay them. It's no job really. There's no hours. It's just kind of random, make $25, right? Maybe that's something you look into. Like where you just have somebody that just wants to make extra money. I mean, if people are out there doing Grubhub and everything else, why wouldn't they every quarter go spend, 3-4 hours driving around and, you could get the gifts, tell them what to go get or Amazon it all to them. They package it up and they go drop it off at their doors. And, at least you're still getting the same thing accomplished. Maybe it's not your face there, but I think people will, look at that and say like, oh, like that's a huge effort that we're still getting like gifts at our door, even though she's not here.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're right. 100% limiting belief. And that's that letting go of control a little bit component too, because it hasn't gotten done while I've been gone. And I keep saying I'm going to go do it, but guess what? It's still not getting done. And it's just this cycle that I'm trying to break, but that's a good idea.
So what's your next thing here in Arizona? Like, what are you trying to tackle here? Cause I know like, obviously what we found is, referrals come and as you compound time, you get more and more. But when you want to like scale, you've got to usually do some form of marketing. So are there any like plans in the future of things you want to do outside of just organically growing your network?
Yeah, I've operated this whole time not having a website. And so that's a change I'm actually actively working on that. I know you and I were discussing that a little earlier. So I want to try to build more of I guess it's still a little organic, but kind of an online lead generator for myself. I don't want to pay a third party, Zillow or any of that. I want to start generating my own online, utilizing a website.
Yeah, that'll be a game changer for you. I mean, we do that in our business. And obviously, like I mean, when I look at my P&L, I clearly know, like I'm telling, I can still get the chills when I get referrals. And, you know, the 25 internet leads I get a day, I definitely don't get the chills when I get them. But what you do find is you do find great clients in there. You know, the 1 out of 100 that you call that are a great client. And then and you're good at doing what you do. And then that one client out of 100 online leads, it goes and they're a raving fan.
Right.
And then you get the next month 100 leads and you get that one and you're good at what you do. And then they rave about you and you do what you do and you just get more closings and you're just going to compound what you did here. Let's go back there to New Mexico. So like, what do you think? How have you been closing more transactions being gone? Do you think that'll carry on? Like, do you really feel that that's
You know,
gonna carry on?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
I
I
do
don't want to be,
too.
I'm a little cautiously optimistic, right? But I have actually revamped my marketing for New Mexico. So you know, talking with Kevin and Fred, they they just kind of set me down and they were like, Desireé, you have New Mexico. Like, why are you pushing so hard in Arizona? You have New Mexico. Go take care of New Mexico. And that was kind of a recent aha moment for me. It's actually been growing almost in spite of me. And so I'm going to redirect myself so that it can grow as a result of me.
Yeah.
And so actually, you know, I am curious or not curious, but excited to grow Arizona just because I love real estate and I want to be active in the everyday today. But that was a real light bulb for me. I didn't have a good answer as to why I've been doing what I've been doing. So it's refocus on New Mexico time is actually what I'm doing from afar.
Yeah. It's funny when you walk away from certain things, how they do get bigger. It's like next to this office where I'm doing the podcast is where my office is at, where they're actually doing transactions. Sometimes I walk in there and they're like, okay, bye, like, please leave, you know, because I'm like, I just gotta go in there and usually stir stuff up. And they're like, we actually run sometimes better when you're not here. And I'm like, okay, so like you go do your job, we'll do ours. And I think that's, you know, when you move states, like you clearly, like there's so many lines that are just drawn in the sand there. There's no longer I can go do this. You know, I think when you're so local, it's always simple. Like, oh, I can go show that client, right? Like, oh, this is a different client. This is a lead I've got to do. Feel like it's so easy to say like, I can just do it. And then when you're gone, it's no, like clearly I'm not going back 7 hours to go do that.
Yeah.
So I think you're just like, you're forced, like the ship's been burned, that like you almost learn leverage or you just go out of business and you're smart. So you learned leverage. And now I think you and I are probably on the same journey of trying to learn it better, you know, like every day, like trying to really just like figure out how to be better. And that's challenging. So with that being said, so you're leaning back into New Mexico and saying like, I want to keep scaling this, which is probably wise. But you still would like to do that here in Arizona as well, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. What are you most excited about in real estate right now?
I'm just most excited about what's to come. I have so many ideas and I have this fire right now that I just know when this happens, I'm unstoppable. So I'm just really looking forward and excited to some things I'm implementing in New Mexico and Arizona kind of simultaneously. And I'm just confident it's going to grow and I'm excited to watch that happen.
Very cool. What would you say as we're wrapping up? Like, what is for an agent out there right now who's trying to grow or trying to scale something, what would you recommend? Like someone like, let's say they're doing 10, 15, 20 deals and they're trying to get to 40, 50, 60. Like, what do you feel that they should be doing more of?
Well, I think it all begins with leverage. So if you're doing 10 to 15 and you don't have a transaction coordinator in place yet because you just don't think you're producing at a level to justify it, you're holding yourself back. So that to me is your first leverage component, is to make sure that you have someone handling the transactional aspect of your job, the things that you don't need your hand on. And for me, you know, it was just a matter of getting in front of more people touches. So if that's your strength, which I think if you're a realtor, it's likely one of your strengths, then just keep leveraging yourself so that you can constantly be growing relationships that will then lead to clients and referrals.
Okay. How many, since you brought up the leverage part, how many deals or transactions were you doing when you finally thought like, oh, I need a transaction coordinator?
I think the first year I hit 30 deals, I was like, this is too much.
Yeah,
This is too much. So, and that was, I waited too long.
I did
Looking
too.
back and reflecting, I wish I would have done it from day one.
Isn't that interesting though, that anybody who fights that and then finally grasp it, they start doing it usually quicker. Like I think I was doing about 35 or 40. And I always would be like, oh, I'm really good at these spreadsheets. I had spreadsheets and tabs for every client, right? And I always acted as like I was really good at it. And I thought I was. But then when I let it go, I was so freed up. And it was literally like, whoa, it's like a game changer. And then you're like, this is how you go from 30 to 70, and then you get that buyer's agent. You're like, whoa, this is how you go from 80 to 120. It's so interesting how we want to fight it for so long. I do a lot of podcasts and almost everybody fights it for so many years. And then the second that they do it, they're just like, oh, you almost get addicted to it. So now I'm like, hey, can I get someone to check my emails, answer my voicemails? Like, obviously you can't have someone do everything, I don't think, but
If there's a way, you'll figure it out.
I'm kind of addicted to it right now. Hey, what are some last words that you would like to leave before we get off? Just to, you're talking to a big crowd of people who are realtors, some new, some super experienced. What would be your last words? Anywhere they can follow you at, or?
That's a big thing to think of. I guess some just closing words I think would just be, remember your people. Like, look to who is encouraging you. You've probably heard, like, look for the helpers. Look for your helpers, acknowledge them, and then be their helper. So it's just this cycle of continuously taking care of people. And I just strongly believe you will be taken care of in the process.
Very cool. Yep. I can tell how you've grown a big business, even from afar. I mean, you can tell you care about people, and that's super cool. It's interesting how, real estate, you can run such a big business if you just care about people. It's almost a byproduct of anything. I find, like any service industry, just go do good for the people. And then whatever your service that you actually do to make a living for your family, like, just comes. It can be so natural, but some people make it so hard, but it can be so natural.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, have a good day.
You too.
Hey, bye-bye.
Bye.